The world is not given to us. It is constructed. At every moment, our senses are bombarded with more information than could possibly be processed, and the mind makes a radical selection, attending to some things, ignoring others, bringing certain elements into sharp focus while allowing everything else to blur into background. What determines that selection? William James's answer was one of the most important things he ever said: interest. In Principles of Psychology, James argued that the mind is fundamentally selective, and that the principle of selection is relevance to what the organism cares about. We notice what matters to us. We see what we are looking for. We hear our name spoken across a crowded room even when we cannot make out any other individual voice. The carpenter sees the wood grain that the tourist walks past. The musician hears the harmony that the non-musician experiences only as sound. Interest is not a passive response to what is there. It is an active construction of a world from the raw material of sensation. This has a consequence that James drew out with characteristic directness. The world of the person with rich and varied interests is a richer and more varied world than the world of the person with narrow or deadened interests. Not because anything in the external environment is different, but because the selecting mind brings different things into existence as experience reality. Two people can walk the same street and inhabit different worlds. What they notice, what registers, what seems significant, these are functions of what they care about, what they have trained themselves to see, what the history of their interest has made vivid to them. James found this both exciting and sobering. Exciting because it meant that the richness of experience is, to a significant degree, within our control, that by cultivating genuine interests, by learning to care about more and different things, we can literally expand the world we inhabit. Sobering because it meant that the narrowing of interest, through habit, through indolence, through a culture that rewards only certain kinds of attention, produces a corresponding narrowing of experience reality. The person who has lost the capacity for interest has not merely lost a pleasant addition to life. They have lost a dimension of the world itself. In talks to teachers, James made this the cornerstone of his educational philosophy. The goal of education, he argued, is not to transmit information but to cultivate interest. A student who has been given facts but not the interest that would make those facts alive has been given very little. A student who has been given genuine interest in a subject, who has been made to care about it, who has been shown why it matters, who has experienced the pleasure of understanding, that student has been given something that will grow and ramify through the rest of their life. But how does interest work? James was careful here. He distinguished between two kinds, the immediate and the derived. Some things are immediately interesting, bright, moving, surprising, unexpected. These capture attention automatically, without effort. A loud sound, a sudden movement, an attractive face. These demand attention through the nervous system's built-in sensitivity to certain stimuli. The entertainment industry runs almost entirely on this kind of interest. Derived interest is different and more important. It is the interest we take in things because we have come to understand their connection to something else we care about. The medical student who finds biochemistry tedious until they realize it is the key to diagnosing the diseases they have committed their life to treating, and then finds it suddenly fascinating. The history student who finds dates and treaties boring until they connect them to questions about how injustice persists across generations, and then cannot get enough. Derived interest is what makes expertise possible and what makes lifelong learning sustainable. It grows rather than diminishes. James also noted something subtle about the relationship between interest and effort. We tend to think that we are interested in things that require no effort. That interest makes things easy. He observed that the relationship often works the other way. Sustained effort, the willingness to push through initial difficulty and confusion, is frequently what generates genuine interest. The subject that seemed impenetrable reveals itself as one engages with it. The more you know, the more interesting things become. Ease of engagement is often the beginning of disengagement. Difficulty, persisted through, is often the beginning of absorption. The contemporary relevance of this is acute. We live in an environment engineered to capture immediate interest, to produce the sensation of engagement without requiring genuine effort or understanding. The result, as James would have predicted, is a paradox, a world saturated with stimulation in which sustained genuine interest is increasingly rare. We are entertained without being interested. We consume without caring. And the world, experienced this way, gradually loses its texture. James's prescription is not complicated, but it is demanding. Cultivate genuine interests. Go deep into things rather than skimming across many. Accept the initial friction of not understanding, and push through it toward the point where understanding begins to generate its own momentum. Pay attention with intention, not just in response to what is bright and loud and new. The world that becomes available on the other side of that effort is not the same world you started in. Subscribe to The Psychology of William James to explore more of his timeless ideas.